Everybody, welcome back to New York Stock Exchange. We're here above the options exchange and the buttonwood podium, the iconic NYSE. You're watching AI Factories, Data Centers of the Future. My name is Dave Vellante, and we're super excited to have Beth Williams here. She's the Global Portfolio Lead for AI, Apps, and Data, three of our favorite topics from Dell Technologies. Beth, great to see you again. Thanks for coming in.
Great to see you too.
So you are in the organization that's helping customers get ready for AI. And we're specifically in this series, Beth, we're talking about enterprise AI. We know there's a lot of action in the cloud. We see all the green, all these last weeks and months here at the New York Stock Exchange with all the CapEx that's going in and the clouds and the neo clouds. And I know you guys are supplying a lot of those, but we're really interested in focusing on enterprise AI, bringing AI to the data, how organizations are thinking about that. So I want to start with, first of all, share your role, because I think a lot of people don't really understand that Dell has this capability and works very closely with customers. They think of you as mostly a hardware company, which you are, but you've also got this consulting capability. So explain your role, if you would.
Yeah, I think we're probably the best kept secret sometimes, even within Dell. As you say, we're often known for our storage and our laptops, but one of our biggest capabilities is around services, professional services. So that can cover anything, say, from consulting services all the way through to managed services. My role is to make sure that we've got the right services for the customer so we can support them all the way through from the initial kind of day zero strategy all the way through to that day two managed services.
So customers are obviously excited about AI. Boards are saying, hey, what's your AI strategy? But what are you seeing? What are you hearing from customers? What are their big challenges and concerns? Obviously, they're concerned about the legal and compliance, but what are you hearing in the field?
So, I mean, what we're seeing as well with some of the kind of recent studies like the MIT studies, we're seeing a lot of AI pilot failures, right? And I think there's a number of reasons for that. Some of it, I think, is maybe the choice of the pilots to begin with. So we learned the hard way within Dell. You've got to choose those initial use cases really well. So one of the things that we try and do with our customers is learn from our mistakes, if you like, and make sure that you choose the right use cases to start with. So looking at things like business feasibility and technical feasibility, but at the same time, looking at the data that's involved in the pilots. So we have a kind of three-pronged approach. We look at the high value. We also look at how technical it is, but we look at the data readiness as well. And then what we're seeing then, if we get all those things combined, if we can do a sort of proof of value with customers really early, make sure the pilots are tested on real data, what we can then show is a real good path to production and also a really good path to ROI. So those initial choices around use cases, I think, are really important. But then also, where are those use cases going to live ongoing, right? So are they going to be on-prem, in which case our AI factory is fantastic? Are they going to be in the cloud, in which case is data privacy important? So looking at that production next step as well. So as I say, in the industry, what we're seeing is a lot of AI pilots kind of stalling, but then also not necessarily know where those AI pilots should run after they've gone through that pilot phase, on-prem, cloud. Where is that placement for both the AI and the data?
There's also a lot of, obviously, POCs going on in the cloud. Low risk, don't have to spend the CapEx. You could spin up, spin down. That's great. And maybe you can even use synthetic data to try to just get a groove swing going. And then we're seeing a lot of customers saying, okay, now we want to go into production. We're going to do that on-prem. We're going to bring the AI to the data, we like to say. And so, but they don't necessarily have their full data act together for that use case. They've, as I say, maybe they've used synthetic data or maybe a subset of their data. How are you helping customers get their data act together? What are you seeing? What are you recommending? How do you start? I mean, I'm nervous about customers trying to like a snake swallowing a basketball.
Yeah.
And so how are you addressing that? How are customers addressing it?
We try not to scare people into saying you need to do like a 2-year transformation project before you do anything on-prem. That's the first thing we try to make sure we get right to start with, which is we ourselves have been on that kind of data transformation journey for quite a while. So we've got some great experience with our own Dell IT about how we've built a kind of framework which allows us to have data products as a service. But we started small, and we didn't wait until we had all of those pieces of the jigsaw in place before we started doing use cases. So what we try and do with customers is, first of all, work out where they are, right? So we have this data readiness assessment that we work through with customers, which has the 6 dimensions that we look at. And those dimensions are what we've had to learn ourselves we need to get in place before we did, large scale use cases and data readiness. So we look at those 6 dimensions, which are things like strategy and governance, whether or not you've actually got the skills in place to do this kind of new data product landscape, which is a kind of a different way of thinking about data. What are your abilities at the moment around pipelines to find the data, ingest the data? Do you have data catalog? Are you virtualizing data? Because silos of data are a real big problem for customers right now. They've got lots of data in lots of different places, structured and unstructured. Are they using virtualization? And do they have things like observability and quality in place? And then finally, where we obviously have quite a few great products, is the actual platform and technology itself. So we look at those 6 dimensions to start with customers. And this might sound like it's a long process, but actually we can do this really quickly. We have this accelerator workshop, which we can do in about half a day to a day. It gives us a good sort of heat map as to where customers are and where we might need to help them in terms of, following our journey to that full data product as a service. And then what we do is, instead of saying, right, okay, everybody stop for a year whilst we build this amazing data platform, we say, okay, let's start small. Let's take your important use cases. Let's make sure we get the capability in place for those use cases. And let's incrementally build on those capabilities all the way from, say, a lakehouse to virtualization, to governance, all the way up to data products. So as I say, it's an iterative journey that we do. And at the same time, we're giving value in terms of implementing real use cases with real data whilst we're building that data platform.
I have a kind of a strange question for you, but I hope I can make it make sense. So you know how we talk about AGI all the time, artificial general intelligence. And let's say we're here with whatever state AI is today, GPT-5, and AGI is somewhere, over here. And there's this gap. And we're not really quite exactly sure how we're going to get there. We know with scaling laws and the increased performance, we're going to get there eventually. We're not sure when, we're not sure how. Is there a similar dynamic with your customers in that there's this North Star, agentic AI? I've got millions of agents. I've got these workflow AI just spinning up workflows, and my organization has 10x productivity, and this is this amazing North Star. We're not really sure how we're going to get there. Do you even bother laying out that North Star and trying to figure out a roadmap as to how to get there, how to harmonize the data, how to have an agent control framework, how to secure it, et cetera? Or do you say, look, let's just get some quick wins and get a groove swing going, muscle memory, all these sports analogies, and then sort of figure out what that reasonable North Star is? How would you recommend approaching that?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. The one thing around AI at the moment is I'm not entirely sure we know what that North Star is, right? I think we might know what it is, but there's so much change and innovation happening at the moment that if you think too far ahead right now, I think we might be slightly off the mark. So whilst I like having a North Star, I'd like to think maybe a year or two in advance. And right now, and you mentioned it, right now, agentic is where it is, right? So, we started off the journey with large language models, and then we realized quite quickly that we need to think about putting context to those models with, say, RAG, okay? So we weren't necessarily going to go through all this training to get our own models. We were going to take pre-trained models, add our context using RAG. What we've seen as the next iteration of that, to your point, is very small kind of steps towards that North Star is agentic RAG, right? So one of the issues with using large language models, even if you are using retrieval augmented generation, is that you can still get hallucinations. You can still get incorrect answers. And I think one of the big problems people have seen so far with large language models is they don't necessarily trust the output. And until you can trust the output, you can't trust your agents, right? So one of the things that we've seen really expand is this ability to use agents within that RAG workflow so that you can improve the data quality, you can improve the output, less hallucinations, more relevance. So that was the first kind of step up from RAG to agentic RAG. And then we start looking at, okay, so now where can we use agents for other workflows? Where can we start to say, let's build an agent for to help a sales assistant, or let's build an agent to help a support assistant. And so we're starting to see the processes that are most important to customers be supplemented with those agents. And I think that's what we're going to start to see evolving over time. More and more of what I would call toil, the repetitive work, the work that takes a bit of time, all of that will be supplemented with agents. And then what we'll also see is innovation, things that we can't even think of today that are now possible because we've got those things in place. And then who knows where we're going to be in a couple of years' time. I think it's going to be really exciting.
But very practical advice. I appreciate that pragmatic approach. What patterns are you seeing in adoption? Are there any sort of industries, verticals? I mean, we're seeing a lot, obviously, financial services. They have the skills, they have the budgets to go hard after AI. We're certainly seeing a lot of real strong results in coding use cases. What are you seeing? Any learnings from internal Dell that apply there, that apply broadly in the industry? Share your expertise there, if you would, Beth.
So we kind of have four main use cases that we were looking at for once we kind of whittled them down to the most important ones. One was kind of supply chain optimization with AI. The other was, including AI in our products. But the two sort of, I think, most helpful one that we've seen recently around things like assistance for sales and assistance for support. And those are predominantly chatbots, right? Chatbots with data from your organization to help either support your own customers or support your internal teams to get to the outcomes they need. And I'd say we've got about, a number of proof of values that we're running at the moment with customers. 50% of those follow a chatbot, pre-trained LLM, RAG model, because that solves so many problems for customers. Yes, there are certain niche use cases that we see. You can start to see a combination of RAG and LLMs with sentiment analysis as well. So we had a customer recently in financial services that wanted to get some feedback from all of these data points they were getting from customers around their branches. And we managed to, get all of that through from those 13 million data points using just a RAG, LLM, and a chatbot. And I think, in all honesty, if you get those kind of core pieces in place, so many of your processes get improved. There's lots of other things like, code generation, content creation, things like digital twins as well. There's loads of other interesting use cases as well. But I think those kind of search and chatbot capabilities are corner to most businesses, regardless of what vertical you're in. Everybody needs to know where their data is. Everybody needs to get answers to questions, whether that's them talking to customers or internally. So I try and explain to people, don't go after the really niche stuff. Solve the 80% problem. And the 80% problem is you've got a ton of information in your organization. How do you make sure that people get that right information quickly, either to help themselves or help customers?
Where would you say your sweet spot is, Beth, that your organization, is most comfortable? You've got the best experience. Your playbook is proven, whether it's, shaping the stack, getting the data house in order, governance, security, dealing with hybrid situations. Where do you see your sort of strongest event, if you will, your strongest swim lane?
So I think we're strong in a lot of different areas. I think to your point earlier on, sometimes we're the best kept secret, right? So a lot of people know us for our products. So a lot of the times when we start with customers, it's going to be at that layer, right? So they understand that we've got these great servers with NVIDIA GPUs and so on. And so a lot of the time we'll start off with an AI factory conversation because that's where they know us to be, right? So, hey, we've got these fantastic servers, now go and build that software platform on top. But we also have, fantastic heritage in data. And we also have our own internal skill around data as well, because as I mentioned, we've created our own data product as a service platform, which we use ourselves. So, data is cornerstone to us. Our AI factory is cornerstone to us. But we also have a fantastic security resiliency business that's been going for a very long time, that is now supplementing things like the AI factory and the AI data platform. So I think we have fantastic capabilities in all those areas. I think people know us to be a little bit more niche because they know us to be Dell. But I think we're starting to expand that footprint.
So do you think the future of enterprise AI is maybe less about the models, the size of the models, all the, the benchmarks of the model, and more about, who can harness that data, who can harmonize that data, how do you secure that data, make it trustworthy so that systems and agents can take action? And if you believe that, I wonder if you could expand on that and explain your thinking.
Yeah, so, data is the gold, right? And I think that for many years, there's been a big pool of data that we've not been able to harness. Unstructured data being that big pool, right? So if you think about the fantastic amount of unstructured data that we haven't been able to really get insights from, all of a sudden now that's available to us. So, video search and summarization, being able to ingest lots of PDFs, being able to scrape lots of internal SharePoint sites, being able to suddenly harness all this data is going to open up so many opportunities for us to be able to innovate and improve our processes. So data is the key. I think, as you say, the emphasis on, which model is best, I think is going to potentially sort of become less. And I think it's going to be more about how do you bring the right context to the model, which is all about where that data is, how you ingest it appropriately, how do you clean it, how do you prepare it. And as soon as you harness all of that gold and all the unstructured data that we've just been keeping, I think the possibilities are endless.
Well, Beth, I want to thank you for coming on to the AI Factories Data Centers of the Future program. I'm looking forward to seeing you in Austin, and we could go deeper into this topic. I'd love to have you back personally, face-to-face at the New York Stock Exchange. So please put that on your wish list, if you would.
Well, I was only there a couple of weeks ago, so I'd love to come back.
Oh, next time you're there, let us know. We'd love to host you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching AI Factories, Data Centers of the Future. This is Dave Vellante for John Furrier. We'll be right back right after this short break. You're watching NYSE Wired and theCUBE's coverage. Right back to the New York Stock Exchange.